Well, we're now going to see a fascinating example of how a really strong player makes double pawns in the opening work for him. This is a game from the Yerevan Olympiad played in 1996. Playing white is Zlatko Ilincic, 2-5-2-0, playing black the Grandmaster Goran Dizdar. And the opening variation is very interesting. It's, on the face of it, very quiet, the Bogo Indian. But after bishop d2, black plays c5, which is known as the Vitalinch variation, voluntarily accepting a pair of double pawns. Now you'd expect that pawn on b4 to become weak, or to be weak, but white has no convenient way of attacking it, and at the same time black is preventing the knight on b1 from coming out to its best square on c3. So this is an awkward pawn for white. It's a bone in his throat, and he's got to find the right way to get rid of it. Black's early middle game plan is revolving around the move e5. Black operates on the dark squares in this variation, so an easy plan for him would be to castle, to go d6, maybe to put his knight on c6, and then to go e5. He may or may not put his queen on e7 during this procedure. And all the while, white tries to find the best way to complete his development. Now, many white players have tried a3 in this position. Black just takes that pawn off. And however white recaptures, there's a hole at b4, which white might not be so willing to accept. So this variation promotes a very interesting struggle, and it sets difficult problems for white. Ilincic played g3, black castled, white played bishop g2, and now black went through with this easy plan of preparing e5. Queen comes up to d3, black plays e5, and now white brings his knight out to d2. So once black plays e5, development is fairly straightforward, and now the bishop comes out to g4. Next up, black might play queen to e7 and protect his rooks. And if white ever attacks that pawn directly, well, it can always be defended by a5. So it all comes back to this idea of a weakness not being a weakness unless it can be attacked. In this case, black's using the double pawn constructively to mess white's development up. Ilincic played e4, a very plausible move. But black played knight d7. Now, if a white knight could sink itself on d5 in this position, I'd have to say that white would have the advantage here. But as it can't, after rook fc1, queen f6, black was starting to put uncomfortable pressure on white's position. As when he pushes by, it creates a beautiful square on c5 for a black knight. Black played knight cb8. So you can see, you know, this position confronts quite a few rules of opening play. It flouts them in white's face. Black is undeveloping now, but he's arguing that the most important feature of this position is the c5 square. If I can get a knight there, you're going to be in trouble. So that's why white tries to break the black stranglehold on the queen side up with a3. Dizdar just plays bishop takes f3. Another excellent move. The reasoning behind this is that he thinks knights are more valuable than the bishop in this particular position because the central pawn formation is blocked. White recaptures with the knight, and now black continues controlling queenside squares with knight a6. So the opening's over, the middle game is in full swing, and I like black in this position. I like his control of the dark squares on the queenside and the fact that white's pawn centre is at the moment immobile. Dizdar also shows another string to the black position, another way of playing it, another idea in the subsequent play. But first, the task is to take control of those dark squares. Very thematic, a lovely square for the knight. So concerned is white with the position of this knight that he moves his knight back, possibly with the thought of ejecting it with knight d3. But does that really eject it? In this type of position, with a pair of knights coming off, black will be left with a superb knight against a not such great bishop. So white's got to be a bit careful how he angles for exchanges. I think most likely is that white will put his knight on c2 in this position and try and force black to relinquish his pawn on b4. If that happens, if the pawn goes, then maybe white can entertain hopes of b4 himself one day. So a very complex position is in progress. Black remanoeuvred his queen to b6. A nice idea, keeping control of b4. White played rook a b1, and now a very, very good move. f5. Black opens up another front. He's got white all tied down there on the queen side, so now he creates some action on the f file. He knows that this will open up perspectives to white's bishop, but he doesn't see any real way that white can take advantage of that. Meanwhile, the doubling up continues. Black is piling on the pressure. So beautifully played here by Black, and I think now he's threatening rook takes f2. White would be ill-advised to allow that, as at the end there'd be a crunching discovered check from the knight on c5. So that's why white plays rook f1. Black drops his rook back out of harm's way, and white plays queen to d2. I think probably slightly better here was to take on b4, and after knight takes b4, queen d2. This is perhaps a slightly better way of playing it. White could perhaps then look forward to b4 at some point. But he played queen d2. The difference was shown immediately when Dizdar took on a3, allowing b4, and now Black interjects a2. A very awkward move for white to meet. And now the pace of the game picks up as Black starts to go in for direct tactics. Knight d3, a fork, white must take it, and then in comes this rook. Rook takes f2. This is lovely play by Dizdar, in full command of the tactics. And if you think about it, this is a full justification of the opening strategy. Started all the way back with c takes b4. This was the moment when Black started to think about controlling the dark squares. So I think you could say that after rook takes f2, this was the triumph of Black's plan. White parked his king in the corner. Black took on f1. Bishop takes f1. And now another crunching move. Knight takes b4. A decoy. Well, the white pieces are lured away from a1, so that after rook takes b4, Black can play queen takes b4, and after knight takes b4, he gets his queen back. Normally, I suppose you'd think that white would have some chance here, but his pieces are so uncoordinated that Black, Black can move in with queen e1, knight c2, queen f2 check. To the end of the game, white can't defend the dark squares. Black wins. So a super game there where Black went into a double pawn situation with his eyes open. White was unable to solve the difficult problems that the position demanded of him, and in the end crashed to defeat. Very nice play by Dizdar. So just to summarise double pawns in the opening or in any phase of the game, you have to go in with your eyes open. Don't take up a double pawn position if you don't know where you're going with it. But if you do know where you're going with it, as you can see, you can pursue a game-long strategy as a result.